My name is William Harkley. I'm 102 years old. On the night of October 23rd, 1942, 1,000 guns lit the desert white, and the earth shook like it was coming apart. I was 18, sitting in a tank, rolling toward Rommel. That white sky has lived inside me for 84 years, longer than most people ever live at all. The desert at night is the most silent place on earth. And then it isn't. At 10 o'clock on the night of October 23rd, 1942, over 1,000 guns opened fire at the same moment. 1,000 guns. The ground shook so violently that I thought the earth itself was splitting open. The sky turned white, not orange, not red, white, like daylight, but wrong. I was 18. I was in a tank. And somewhere ahead of me, in the dark, Rommel's Afrika Korps was waiting. I've lived 102 years. I've had a good life. A wife I adored, children I'm proud of, a country I served. But that night in the desert, that white sky, that silence then thunder, it's been living inside me longer than most of you have been alive.
William, I'm so glad you're here with us today. That image of the white sky, I don't think I'll ever forget it either. So take me back to that night. What happened when the guns stopped and you started rolling forward?
Churchill. That's the honest answer. Churchill needed a victory. Britain had been losing for 3 years. The Blitz, Dunkirk, Singapore, Tobruk, defeat after defeat. The country was exhausted. And Churchill knew that if the Eighth Army didn't win in North Africa, he might lose the premiership, and Britain might lose its nerve. So he sent Montgomery, and Montgomery sent us. I was a tank driver in the 7th Armoured Division, the Desert Rats. We'd been in North Africa for months before El Alamein, chasing Rommel across the Sahara and being chased in turn. The Desert War was like a tide. We'd advance, run out of supplies, retreat. The Germans would advance, run out of supplies, retreat. Back and forth across 1,000 miles of nothing. The Sahara is not what you imagine. It's not sand dunes like in the films. Most of it is hard, flat, rocky ground. Dust that gets into everything, your eyes, your mouth, your food, the engine of your tank. The heat during the day, 45 degrees, 50 sometimes. At night, it dropped to near freezing. You'd go from sweating through your uniform to shivering in it within hours. Living in a tank is living in a metal box. A Crusader tank, that's what I drove. It's cramped, loud, and it smells of oil and sweat and fear. There are 4 men inside, and you're closer to them than you've ever been to anyone. You can feel them breathing. When the driver shifts, everyone shifts. When someone's scared, everyone knows, because you can feel their body tense against yours. My crew. Commander was Lieutenant George Ashworth, 24, from Surrey. Gunner was a Scotsman named Alistair Macpherson, 26. Loader was a boy from Liverpool, Dennis Keane, 19. And me, the driver, 18, from Manchester, who'd never been further south than London before the army put me on a ship to Egypt. George was the one who kept us together. Not with speeches, he wasn't that type. He kept us together by being calm, relentlessly, infuriatingly calm. Shells landing around us, bullets pinging off the armour, radio screaming, and George would say in that Surrey accent, "Right, Will, 10 degrees left, steady on," like we were on a Sunday drive. I hated it and I loved it, and it kept me functional. El Alamein. Montgomery's plan was simple: overwhelm Rommel with superior numbers and firepower. We had more tanks, more guns, more men. But the Germans had laid minefields, miles of minefields. The entire front was seeded with anti-tank mines and anti-personnel mines, and our job was to drive through them. The night of October 23rd, the barrage began at 10 p.m. Over 1,000 guns firing simultaneously across a front of 40 miles. The noise was beyond anything I can describe. It wasn't sound, it was physical. It went through your chest, your bones. Men were crying from the noise alone. Not fear, the sheer physical impact of 1,000 guns firing. Then we moved into the minefields. Sappers went ahead with detectors, marking paths with white tape. We followed in the tanks, driving through corridors barely wider than the tank itself. If you drifted a metre to the left or right, you hit a mine. And I'm driving in the dark, following white tape on the ground, with shells coming in both directions overhead. A tank ahead of us hit a mine. The explosion lifted the front of the tank off the ground. It came down at an angle and stopped. The hatches opened and men started climbing out, and then machine gun fire found them. I watched through my viewing slit. I couldn't stop. The corridor was too narrow to go around. George said, "Eyes forward, Will." So I drove past, close enough to hear the crew screaming. The battle lasted 12 days. 12 days of dust and fire and grinding forward through minefields, while the Germans threw everything they had at us. The tank battles were close, sometimes 100 metres. You could see the German tank commanders standing in their hatches. You could see their faces. On the 6th day we took a hit. An 88mm shell, the German 88, the most feared gun of the war, hit us on the right side. It didn't penetrate fully, but it cracked the armour, and the force of it threw Mac against the turret wall. He broke his collarbone. He didn't scream. He made a sound, a sharp exhale, like someone had punched him, and then he said, "I'm all right." He wasn't. He loaded and fired the gun for 2 more days with a broken collarbone before George ordered him to the field hospital. Mac refused twice before George made it a direct order. We lost Dennis on the 9th day. We'd stopped behind a ridge, and Dennis had opened his hatch for air. The heat inside was unbearable, and a sniper's bullet came through the gap. It hit him in the neck. He fell back inside the tank, and I felt his weight land against my shoulder, and I felt the blood. And George was shouting for a medic, but there was no medic, because we were in the middle of a tank battle in the middle of a desert. And Dennis bled out on the floor of our tank in maybe 3 minutes. He was 19. He had a girl in Liverpool named Jean. He talked about her constantly, what they'd do after the war, where they'd live, how many children they'd have. He decided on 3, 2 boys and a girl. He'd already picked the names. I drove the tank for 3 more days, with Dennis's blood on the floor. They didn't clean it. There was no time. The blood dried and mixed with the dust and became part of the tank, part of us.
Did you talk about it when you came home?
No, not a word, not for 50 years. The British way. Stiff upper lip, carry on, don't make a fuss. I came home in 1945, married Margaret in 1947, had 3 children, worked in a factory in Manchester. Normal life. And every night I drove that tank through the minefield, with Dennis bleeding behind me, and George saying, "Eyes forward, Will." Margaret knew something. She always knew. She'd catch me staring at nothing, and she'd say, "Penny for your thoughts, love." And I'd say, "Just thinking." Thinking. That's what I called it. As if the word thinking could contain the things inside my head. I found Mac in the 1970s. Tracked him down through the Regimental Association. He was living in Edinburgh. We met at a pub, and we sat across from each other, and for the first 10 minutes neither of us spoke. We just sat there. And then Mac said, "I still hear the 88. And I said, "I still feel Dennis land on my shoulder." And we drank whiskey, and we cried. 2 old men in a pub in Edinburgh, crying into their drinks. And it was the first real conversation I'd had about the war in 30 years. Margaret died in 2011, and here's my regret, my one great regret. She spent 64 years married to a man who wouldn't let her in. 64 years of just thinking. 64 years of waking up to find me sitting in the dark. 64 years of patience and kindness and love, directed at a man who couldn't return it fully because half of him was still in a tank in the desert. She deserved better. She deserved the whole man. She got the man minus Alamein. And the part that was missing, the part that could be open and soft and fully there, that was the part she needed most. Montgomery's Desert Rat. They put me on the telly for anniversaries. They pinned medals on my jacket, and I smile for the cameras because that's what's expected. But I want to tell you something that's not expected, something un-British, something my generation was never allowed to say. I was afraid. Every moment of that battle I was terrified. And pretending I wasn't, pretending for 84 years that I was brave and strong and fine, that pretending cost me more than the war itself. The British stiff upper lip saved the nation. I believe that. In 1940, when the bombs were falling, that refusal to show fear kept Britain alive. But the stiff upper lip also destroyed a generation of men who came home and couldn't say the words, "I'm not okay." We'd been trained, not just by the military, by our entire culture, to endure silently. And we did. And our wives endured our silence. And our children grew up with fathers who were present but unreachable. And the damage passed down like a family heirloom that nobody wanted but everybody inherited. I'm telling you this, especially you young men, because I know you're watching. Being strong is not being silent. I was silent for 84 years, and it cost me the deepest connection with the woman I loved. George would have said it better. George had a way with words. But George died in 1998, and Mac died in 2004, and Dennis died on the floor of our tank on the 9th day of El Alamein, and I'm the only one left. So I'm saying it badly, because saying it badly is better than not saying it at all. Tell them, whoever it is, tell them what you're carrying. Not the polished version, the real one, the blood on the floor version, the one that makes you human. Dennis wanted 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. He'd picked the names. I remember them. I remembered them for 84 years. He never got to use them. Don't waste what he didn't get. Eyes forward, that's what George said. Eyes forward. I'm saying the opposite. Look back. Look at what you're carrying. Then set it down and look at the people around you. Really look at them. Before they become names you remember, alone in the dark.